This is our probably penultimate video recording, and so I'd like to go over a few things with you about the class and how it's going, and also about the final week. Here we are in the middle of the 5th week. At the end of this week, you're doing another interview, which you should understand how to do. Make sure that you're referring back to the book. I don't just want what you observe. I want to know what you do with that. How does it relate to the grief things that we've been reading about in the book? So make sure that you're documenting those. That's what your grade is based on. You may have learned a lot, you may tell a lot during the interview, but I want to know, how does that relate? So that is the whole thing that your grade is determined by. All right, next week will be the last week. You have a final exam. This is open book. You can use anything that you want to, as long as we've gone over it in class, not just something that you find on internet. Please document. You must put page numbers. You probably are not going to get full credit if you do not put a page number. And the reason for that is that sometimes you have an answer that really does seem to answer the question for what you understood, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. If I can find the page that you are referring to, sometimes I will give you credit because it makes sense to me that that must be what you were seeing. So make sure you do put the page. The other main point is I do not want long answers. Now, I understand you want to be complete. Look at the number of points that will be awarded to each question. If it's a 10-point question, you're going to have a longer answer than a 2-point question. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind, if I've asked you to do 2 things, if I ask you to describe or identify, I don't mean just put a name, but just a little bit of an identification. What do you mean by that? So make sure you are answering completely, and yet not just carrying on and on and on, hoping that you're somewhere along the line going to find what I want. It's not the idea. I want to know, have you internalized these concepts? Can you put them into your own words? So you will not receive as much credit, really, just because you have a long answer. Make sure that you're able to paraphrase them in your own words. Let me see other things. Oh, other things are grammar. Now, on the final, grammar, I don't care even if it's complete sentence. I do care, though, about the kind of grammar that I've already talked to you about. For instance, the use of homonyms that I've mentioned, affect and effect. Those two are different. Adolescents have 2 different words that sound the same. Please note that. I keep getting the same thing over and over on some of your assignments. That just glares to me that, oh, I didn't read the instructions, or I didn't read your suggestion, or at worst, I don't care about improvement. Please, if I've already addressed it, the first time, it's really not that big a deal. Grammar is important, but that's not what your grade is based on. But it is important if I've already addressed it. So make sure you get those things clear. Also, documentation. Within the parentheses goes the person's name that you got it from and the page number. There's no comma. And the ending period to that goes at the end of those parentheses, not before, not inside the quotation marks, but at the end. So make sure your documentation is correct, because I have addressed that several times. The other grammar issue is one that has to do with pronouns. The word like presents a problem usually. We usually say something like, oh, that's just like me, or he did that just like me. If you complete the sentence or the thought, it would be, he did that just like I do. Therefore, it's he did that just like I. And be sure you're listening to yourself on that. It should be grading when you use things like him and me went to the store, or like that was for my husband and I. It wouldn't be that is for I, it's that is for me. Therefore, that's for my husband and me. It's always the same as if you only had one pronoun or one object, And so use the correct pronoun that you would use if you only had one, although you have two. Okay, let's go on to the timelines. I get very emotional, really, reading your timelines. They are just incredible. It sounds like you are learning so much about yourselves. But again, your grade is determined by the academics of it. So if you did not get as good a grade as you thought you should, that doesn't have to do with who you are. It doesn't even have to do with your life story. It has to do with, are you able to convince me that you're connecting the dots here and are referring back to the theorists, the theories, the norms that are in the book. That's what your grade's based on. But I am thrilled when I'm reading your stories. I'm also deeply touched by the hurt that has gone through, or that has been in so many of your lives. But as you work through them and want to help others, I hope you're also getting some aspect of why this happened and what may be a conclusion. Be very careful on saying, this is the conclusion. Absolutely. I know it's because of this. It's still speculation. You can say, it seems like that probably was because of my mother's alcoholism. Well, yeah, and then document what the book says about it. But in psychology, we don't know absolutely positively for certain on much of this. It still is speculation. In your final timelines, this is not going to be just a cut and paste of your other two. It will be to some extent, but basically, I want you to take those two, look at them, and then put it all together, including in the last chapter, which is also with death. And that will be an extrapolation for quite a few of you. Well, for all of you on death. I guess none of you are coming back from the grave and writing this. But be sure that you include in your final timeline, this is a major, major paper. Be sure you include the theorists, Erickson, his stages, possibly Piaget, that would be an important person. Kohlberg, include the moral development and the stages, and Gottman, that relationship kind of thing. Possibility of some of the other ideas that are in the book of can't think of her name, sorry. But keep those things in mind, that that's what you've got to convince me that this happened. And when I relate it to what this theorist says, it makes sense. Do lots of that. That is totally what I'm looking for. Be sure you include the major dimensions of your life: intellectual, physical, psychological, social, emotional, spiritual. Include those dimensions. When you leave something out, it sounds like you're not looking at the whole person. And we're looking at this as if you were a counselor and having your own clients. The markers for adulthood. Some of you had trouble finding those markers. The markers are different. They are things like, and they will be different in every society. But in our culture, a lot of it is maybe getting a college degree or finishing a trade school, getting a full-time job, getting married, having children. Those are some markers that we look at as meaning adulthood. And so those are the kind of things that society looks at and says, oh, yeah, I think he is there. All right, a lot of these things, like I said, I've already gone over. We got over here. Any other thing? Oh, I wanted to clear up um, one quiz question. The last question asked for two types of problem areas. I did change that from three back to two. That was supposed to have been corrected, and I guess I overlooked it. The two problem areas that I was looking for were perpetual and solvable. Those things that, yeah, we come to an agreement, the things we're never going to agree, but we do somehow compromise. Those are the two kinds of problems I was looking for on that very last question, but it was somewhat enigmatic. All right, on your final, make sure that you allow enough time. People tell me it's very time consuming. I don't mean it to be that way. If you're spending just horrible amount of time. Something's wrong. You're writing too much. Look in your index. This is open book. Contact me if you feel like something is confusing. If a question calls for you to describe or identify, that means not only give me the name of it, but also give me a brief description. It can be very brief, but make sure you read the whole question and do answer that. One other thing that I wanted to go over that you do need to know are those factors of ocean, OCEAN. Some of you saw that as, okay, I fall into the O category or I fall into the E category. No, those 5 categories are things that everyone has, and each one of them is like a Likert scale. Where do I fall on the O part, openness? Am I more closed? Am I more open? You fall somewhere in that. Each one of those is like that. So, in looking at that, you'll have to view each person as having those characteristics, but falling more towards one end or the other of each of those. So, that seemed to be a problem area, not really well understood. All right, let me close this penultimate video with an idea. Eunice had, in fact, a post on the 29th of August, talked about a little girl in her preschool class that she said when she grew up, she wanted to be a butterfly. I loved that answer. I loved how Eunice responded to her of not making fun, but seeing that for what it is. What a wonderful, insightful kind of answer. I have a t-shirt that says, I want to be like a caterpillar. Eat all day, go to sleep, and wake up beautiful. That's my final thought for today. Please contact me if you have questions. I can clear anything up. Thanks for a good class. I'll be back again with a final video, but happy learning. Bye.